A few years ago, at the ripe old age of 14, I gave up on waiting for my acceptance letter to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and decided to settle for Daniel instead. Rather than learning jinxes, charms, and potions, I spent my days toiling over Miss Henry's web assigns, scribbling responses for A-push margin questions, and sprinting up the staircase to avoid being late. Despite being unable to attend a wizarding school, looking back, I have found that my experience was a lot more magical than I could have imagined. Let me list just a couple of examples. While attending Hogwarts, one student, Hermione, had a magical time turner that allotted her extra hours to attend classes and complete homework. While we didn't have time turners, we too could magically obtain extra hours to finish that APA chemistry lab report we forgot to start, or to sneak out with friends to go to Waffle House at 2 a.m., the tool otherwise known as the all-nighter. Also at Hogwarts, Harry Potter wins a vial of Felix Felicis potion that guarantees a day of full luck to the drinker. Harry is able to use this potion to navigate a perfect game of Quidditch, a sport whose importance in the wizarding world rivals that of football in ours. In our junior year, our football team pulled out a miraculous 1-point victory over South Point in double overtime, ending their shot at winning a 5th straight state championship. Our victory and the following celebration seemed magical, as if we, too, had our own Felix Felicis. But winning the game wasn't luck. It was a combination of skill and hard work. Instead, the true avenue in which we were lucky was in the celebration afterwards, being fortunate enough to have a close-knit community that can and will come together and embody the school spirit, even at away games. This magic does not just exist in football. It is present when we bump into each other at Chick-fil-A after school, when we read plays together in English, when we text in group chats to ask what the homework assignment was, when we dap each other in the hallways, and perhaps most importantly, when we watch Call of Zeus on CNN 10 every day in Gov. We may not have had self-correcting quills, magical communications, mirrors, or wise Professor Dumbledore, but we had autocorrect, Zoom, and Coach Bill. The true magic in our experience lies not in jinxes, spells, and potions, but in the more common joys that thankfully occupy our memories later. Perhaps Hermione Granger said it best. Books and cleverness, there are more important things, friendship and bravery. I bring this up because we are soon entering a world where it will sometimes be very difficult to keep our bearings. In an age where technology connects us so tightly that we become bombarded with the successes of others, it is easy to feel small, inadequate, and lost. As we mature, it will be crucial to remember to find joy and magic in the little moments as we did in our adolescence. As Professor Dumbledore once said, "Youth cannot know how age thinks or feels, but old men are guilty if they forget what it was to be young." As adults, we may not be able to eat lunch in a cafeteria with our friends every day or share jokes with each other in class, but the same technology that bombards us with information also allows us to remain connected to our friends and family even as we embark on different paths. In fact, just this last semester, we experienced living proof that we do not need to be together physically in order to be together emotionally. So, when we are overwhelmed with the difficulties we will inevitably face, we would do well to remember to laugh with others, to go out and try new things, to check up on our friends and neighbors, and have fun finding simple excitement like we did as children. Because, as Professor Dumbledore, or shall I say Coach Bill, once said, "Happiness can be found even in the darkest of times if one only remembers to turn on the light." Class of 2020, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
In the competitive American reality television show Survivor, contestants called castaways are flown to a remote location and filmed while they build shelter for themselves, find food, and battle the elements in order to survive physically. The more entertaining task requires the castaways to build personal bonds and create strategies to survive socially, or else face elimination through plurality vote from the other castaways. Every season of Survivor tells a story that explains how the eventual winner came to earn his or her title. Ultimately, these stories create characters out of the castaways' personalities, portraying heroes, villains, sidekicks, and comic reliefs. Once the footage is shot, the editors have free rein to shape any narrative about the castaways to fill these classic character archetypes. Well-rounded people can be boiled down to a single trait for the purpose of furthering the story. In his 2017 novel, Turtles All the Way Down, John Green describes this phenomenon perfectly. Green states, "Life is a story told about you, not one that you tell." At first glance, such an idea is terrifying. Telling the story means controlling the narrative. If we tell our own stories, we get to be the heroes. We know our own motivations, feelings, and ambitions in a way no one else can. If someone else tells the story, there's danger that we end up as a character, with our motivations, feelings, and ambitions on the cutting room floor. On August 23, 2000, 51.7 million Americans tuned in to watch the final episode of the very first season of Survivor. The season had begun with 16 castaways, and now 3 were left. For the final challenge, the castaways were tasked with standing on a small perch while keeping one hand on a totem in the center at all times. The last person standing would win a coveted spot in the final 2, which meant that he or she would not only have a chance to win the $1 million prize and title of sole survivor, but would also be able to choose which of the other 2 remaining castaways to compete against, and which would be the final person eliminated. In a shocking move, castaway Richard Hatch voluntarily stepped down from the challenge after 2 hours. With the Survivor editors as narrators, Hatch was painted as a villain for throwing the challenge. Yet, Hatch went on to become the winner of the season. Upon further investigation, Hatch's decision proved to be ingenious. Hatch's shrewd calculation and social observation earned praise from fans. Hatch was decently certain that each of the others would pick him to join them in the final 2, and if he wasn't the one to do the picking, he got to avoid hurting either's feelings. The same strategy that upset the editors won the adoration of fans everywhere. If we accept the notion that we have the responsibility of telling other people's stories, we must be careful to tell good ones. In the same way that Richard Hatch's decision to quit that final challenge could be interpreted as a villainous manipulation or a brilliant strategy, we can choose how to understand the actions of others. In some ways, stereotypes about high school work in a similar way to that of a Survivor edit. We hear stories about how students wade through their high school years with the burden of a label that other people project onto them: nerd, jock, class clown. However, the stereotypes of one-sided stories about people are only true if we allow them to be. Real life is not reality television, and real people are not characters. By imagining others complexly and generously, we diversify our views of others' identities, which makes for a richer story, and thus a more empathetic and compassionate view of the world. Let us strive to see others more completely. Let us all decide to be good storytellers.